Good morning, friends. It's Sandra Clay. I'm the pastor at Cooks United Methodist Church. Welcome to Monday morning. Welcome to the third week in the Lenten season. Welcome to all that God has for you today. Pretty bold statement for some of you to hear. But we believe that God has given us the gift of this day by waking us up, and it's not just ours to do with, and it's not just owned by our employers or our teachers. It is a gift from God. So I trust that as we begin this new day together, we will be better able to use it, spend it in such a way that it honors God. So several things as you guys pop on, several things I want to remind you of. We've got tons of things going on here in the life of Cooks, for fellowship, for study, also for worship as we move into the middle season of this important season. So if you're not in the Middle Tennessee area, we want to encourage you to find a church home, a family that you can choose for your own. Man, we need each other even more today than maybe we ever have in the past, though my guess is every generation says that. So tons of opportunities. We hope that you'll take advantage of those. If you have any questions, check out the website. You could also call the church office or shoot an email off to somebody here in the office, and we'll get back to you as quick as we can. I do want to lift for us today for a matter of prayer. Several folks in several situations that most of us are familiar with. Good morning, Jane. How are you today? We continue to pray for the United Methodist Church and for all of her local congregations anywhere, everywhere around the world. For many, this is a season of discernment and decision making. Although a decision is not required, just conviction to stay United Methodist. We had a wonderful time of conversation yesterday here at Cooks, and we look forward to being a soft spot to land for those who feel disenchanted by or forgotten, if not rejected by the local church. You're welcome here, and we'll do our best to love you, though we are very imperfect. But as we say, toward everyone who comes our way, we're a better family because you are here, and we're trusting you to help that come to fruition. So you are welcome in this place, but we have a burden and a responsibility to pray for one another. So I lift up the United Methodist Church, and I don't know if those of you who are familiar with Ellen Humrick House and the La Lumiere ministry, I don't know whether you caught this or not, but the Spirit is up to something. And so after 6 weeks of separation, because of, excuse me, that hour is still getting me. I'm sorry, I did not have enough coffee yet. Because of unrest in the country that came at a time when Ellen needed to return to make sure that her visa was valid, and then everything shut down because of turmoil in the country. It has been almost 6 months since she has been with her girls. The nannies and those who have run that ministry with her have had it on their own. And don't you know, those girls would be so excited to see Mama Ellen. So we are going to join her in prayer, but I also want to direct you to her. I'm going to give you her name and the name of her ministry again in just a second if you need to get something to write with. But if there is a way for you to contribute to that, if you feel led to do that, I want you to check her out again if this is a new name for you. Beautiful, and it's just an amazing ministry that reaches so many. So her name again, you can find her on Facebook and get to her post and find the way to connect there. Ellen, just like it normally is spelled, Ellen Humrick House. If you'll start with Humer, it ought to pop right up, but Humrick House. And the name of the ministry is La Limye, L-A, and then as next word, Limye. So be in prayer for Ellen and all of her sweet little girls. They have missed their mama Ellen. So also want to lift up before us again Jean and Lisa and Angela, all struggling with their own health issues presented in their own bodies or in the body of somebody that they love. And Julie and Mark with Harmony Lane. Been a tough weekend for a lot of folks, but God is up to something. And so before we move on to spend some moments being challenged by Scripture, I just want to say, I haven't in a long time, this is a trustworthy group. So you may not see a lot of names popping on here right now, but there are very many who read throughout the day or come back and listen throughout the day. And so if there's something on your heart to celebrate or that you want company in facing, essentially through prayer, then we would love the opportunity to do that. So if you just kind of jot a note down there. If not, if there's a way that we can pray for you here as a part of the leadership at Cook, send us a note and we'll be glad to be praying with you and for you. It's a pleasure, I think, and a privilege and such a comfort for us to be able to be together. So here we go. You ready? Third week in the Lenten season. This is Monday, so we're not quite halfway through yet. But it's the halfway through mark that gets my attention. So we're going backwards just a little bit in a sense of timing, and I forgot to get my book out, sorry. This is Rachel Srubus's book, The Desert of Compassion. That's one of the 4 resources. I'm sorry again, Gail, but there's no more than just those 4 this time. Rachel Srubus has some profound challenges for us here at the halfway mark. And so we're going to be thinking about Jesus in the wilderness, though that happens very early at the beginning of his ministry. Matter of fact, before his ministry actually begins in public, in earnest, there is this time after his baptism. All of the Gospels that record those events have the Spirit moving him toward the wilderness or toward the desert for a time of testing, a time of solitude to prepare him for ministry. Listen to this. This is from Mark's Gospel, and it's the portion of Scripture that Rachel Srubus in her book will then kind of paraphrase. And so I'm going to read those 2 sections together. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." And the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days, tempted by Satan, and he was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him. I want you to hold this next portion in your heart, if you can. Rachel's paraphrase of that. From Jesus's perspective, my spirit breaks free of the ripped open heavens and dives down into your life. Precise and fearless in her descent, she is not violent, but neither is she delicate. With an elegant economy of wing beats, she alights to make you know, I'm pleased to call you my beloved child. Yet she also sends you far from your customary comforts into wild places. She is the reason you'll dare to face your fears and endure the trials of your desert season. She will see you through to your new, true self, now burgeoning. I love those images simply because it's not just a retelling of what it must have been like for Jesus. That's what it's like for us. When we allow the Spirit to have her way, his way with us, not only is there comfort and peace, but there is ascending. There is a testing of our trust. There is opportunity for us to let go of the things that would keep us from God's, the depth of God's very best, and to hang on to her. My guess is you've heard this story about Jesus' baptism and Jesus's going into the wilderness a gazillion times, like I have. Many of us grew up in the church, and so a quick reminder, in Mark's gospel, that's all the detail we get. It's in the other gospels that we are reminded that it was during the 40 days that Jesus was there that he went without nourishment. 40 days then becomes that pattern, or that formula is not the right word. There's a pattern there that we follow for the Lenten season as we daringly kind of walk into our own desert. And so 40, which comes from the Latin word for Lent, quadragesima, means long or length, or to lengthen. That quadragesima responds directly to the 40 days, but we're not even halfway through. I'm not going to ask anybody to confess if you've given up a consumable comfort for Lent, what it's like now when you smell coffee percolating, or when somebody else is talking about what happened on television last night, or when you are offered a piece of chocolate. I don't know what your Lenten season observance is like, but I want to ask us for just a moment to think about what it means to be sustained by discipline, because now about halfway through we find both comfort. We've gotten past the caffeine headache, or the lack of caffeine headache. We've gotten past the other discomforts maybe that come with saying no to things that really are a luxury to us. They're not necessary. But we've got to get a picture of what it was like for Jesus in his wilderness season. 40 days. Was it actually 40 days? I don't know. The biblical import for the number 40, and we can also lump into that the number 3, the number 7, the number 10. There are all of these numbers that point us to holy activity, or something bigger than we can count on the calendar or on the clock. However long it was a long time. And Rachel Strubus points out for us in her book what I believe is absolutely beautiful. Beautiful because it does not have to be terrifying, but it is in the moment of Jesus's weakness that the enemy comes a-calling. Isn't that the way it works for us? It's when we are at our weakest. So I want you to try to imagine what it was like if it was 40 days or whatever the length of time was that Jesus had been with just about everything except water. How quickly his face went gaunt, maybe. How the sweats that our body can produce when we don't have what we need, how that affected the appearance of his hair, of his skin, whether his eyes looked hollow or whether there was a sense of strength and peace there. But no doubt he was fully man as certainly as he was fully God. And so there was a physical impact for this fast of his out in the wilderness. Listen to what Rachel Shreba says in her work. So Jesus fasting for 40 days, he was famished. That's what the Gospels, well, other than Mark, that's what they say. And the real struggle began at his moment of vulnerability. You and I get discomforted when our stomachs begin to grumble. In truth, how many of us really experience hunger every day? Even just the signs of it. Jesus was probably so hungry that he was delirious. Thus, the reason why it's important for us to pay attention in our week times too. All the other Gospels, Matthew, Luke, and John, talk about Jesus being confronted by the enemy, alluring and dealing death as he comes. Temptation in that moment, with that magnitude, almost makes our Lenten observances, our fasts from chocolate or soda or TV or caffeine, they make them almost laughable. Except those of us who have experienced a loved one's addiction. Rachel is one like us. Listen to this quote that she offers there. As the daughter of an alcoholic father who is now deceased, I know about addiction, the baffling, cunning, powerful force of compulsive overconsumption. I know that the sinister presence who showed up at Jesus's moment of weakness, tempting him to do the very things that would destroy him, can be compared to an addiction's hold on a human life. This is how serious the temptation of Jesus is as a parallel for what happens in our lives, my friends, not quite halfway through this Lenten season, attempting to deny ourselves of the luxuries that we often define as necessities. I want you to hear again, it is in our moment of vulnerability and weakness that the enemy comes offering us a solution that will be our very undoing. This time in the wilderness, saying no to those consumables that are not necessary for us, and instead aligning ourselves with those who don't have the choice. They're hungry because something has made them poor. Somehow they have been made poor. So this wilderness experience can help us align our minds towards the justice that has been denied other people instead of just whining that we miss chocolate or caffeine. And it can also be a deepening of our solidarity with those who really struggle with deep and wide vulnerability and weakness because of addiction, because of grief. This season, may it not be lost on you and I, even if we haven't experienced hunger in too long to count. Whatever trials or temptations you and I face, whatever choices we make, this season, if we will allow it, if we will go slow enough and be intentional enough, just like the Spirit drove Jesus into the wilderness, this season, through the Spirit's companionship, will become a wild place for us. Srubus's own words, a wild place of deprivations, of sacrifices, and ultimately of life-giving transformation. But we have to go through it. We have to go through it. It's not too late, my friends, if you have not already started an observance that you want to feel rhythmic in your life, at least for the Lenten season. If you want to give up the money that you would spend on coffees or ice cream out, give that up for the rest of the season of Lent, and give that money to someone who doesn't have the privilege of dropping by for a mocha or a milkshake. It's not too late for you to decide that you will set aside your morning routine in place of, and replace it with, a routine that will put you first in touch with God. Instead of cranking up the news or the radio, how about choosing an hour of silence as you let Scripture wash over you? Or maybe you get up an hour early, giving up an hour of hitting the snooze or whatever you do in those last moments to be able to greet the dawn, to receive at its freshest this new day that God has given you. It's not too late for you to boldly and daringly step into the wilderness. Allow the Spirit to take you there so that you might discover what justice is like, what fighting for justice is like, what knowing the truth of your own worth is like, what knowing the truth of God's grace is for you and for everyone. May you find the Spirit in your struggle, and may you trust that the Spirit will sustain you in that wilderness. It's not too late to get started. For those of you who are halfway through, if you're practicing with coins for Lent, don't just count the light switches or count the flashlights or count the number of pairs of shoes that you have. Think about those with no shoes. Think about those who are in the dark, literally, spiritually, and pray. Pray for them. I just want to encourage you, it's not too late. Halfway through, this is where, like in a hike, where your legs begin to burn just a little bit, where you think, well, maybe I've bitten off more than I could chew, but you still got to get back to base. Yep, we're going to keep going together. We're going to keep plodding through, listening for God's voice, feeling the move of the Spirit within and around us. Yep, here we go, still. I want to pray with you this beautiful prayer that Rachel Srubus closes her devotional that we've been referencing. It's actually called Desert Struggle. So if you have that book, you'll know kind of where we got these things from. Can I pray her prayer over all of us right now? Famished Jesus, In the hollows of your face, I see my own hunger. My hunger for acceptance, for pleasure, my hunger for power, and for peace. I see others' hunger for everything, everything from bread to prestige to justice. May the same Spirit who drove you, Jesus, into the desert drive, sustain, and change each of us. May struggling people hear the voice that proclaimed you beloved, calling them by the same name. For we are the beloved's beloveds. Hold us, drive us, sustain us, transform us. We trust in you. Amen. That may be the greatest prayer that I could ever pray for you, my friends, that you would know that you are called by that very name, God's beloved, with a capital B. You are. You are loved by me, by us, but especially by your Creator. Know that. I will see you soon.